right, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Andrew, thanks for giving me the tour this afternoon up on the Reagan Ranch. And I was thinking of Reagan memories when I was up there. How many people in the room met Reagan? Quite a few. And if you promise you won't laugh, I'll show you my picture with Reagan. Can we show the picture? Ah, there it is. Now, I gave a speech at the Reagan Library, and someone said that I was wearing a red velvet suit. That is not a red velvet suit. That is a rust-colored corduroy suit, three-piece. And it was way better than the leisure suit that I wore the next year, all right? So I keep thinking, the only picture I have with Reagan, I could look like a goofy teenager, and I couldn't I get another picture? But, that's the only time I met him. That was in 1978 when he came to Texas to campaign for my dad. My dad had been one of only 4 congressmen, as Andrew mentioned, that supported Reagan over Ford. And that was a big deal. The sitting president was Ford, and right after my dad was elected in a special election, he went into the White House, and Ford asked him directly, "Can I count on your support?" And he said, "No, I'm supporting Ronald Reagan." And only 4 congressmen did that. I think that's courage, and I think that we need more principled people like that. And too often it's go along to get along in Washington. So, all right, take that picture down. Take that picture down. When I began my run for the presidency, I thought that something new had to happen. I thought that we were not going to win again, that the Republican, this may not be news to you in California, that something's going to have to change in order for us to win. I think I saw somewhere recently 27% of Californians consider themselves to be Republicans. So, there are problems, and I don't think I have to convince you that there are problems in the party, in winning, in victory. And people say, well, how are we going to win? Well, I think we need a new GOP. I think it needs to be bigger, better, and bolder. Do I think we need to give up on anything we believe in? Absolutely not. But we have to figure out and take what we believe in to new audiences. We got to go new places. We got to go places we haven't been. Call me crazy. I went to Berkeley. But I got an ovation at Berkeley a week after I'd gone to Liberty University. Jerry Falwell's university was received there. But because I'm willing to talk about maybe some things that may be a little bit edgier, a little bit different, or maybe a little bit libertarian-ish. But the thing is it's about liberty. So I talked at Liberty University about the dangers of a big government that knows everything about you from cradle to grave. There was a movie, I can't remember the name of it now, but it was a movie where they would determine your DNA from birth, and they could determine how long you would live. They knew everything about you from the very beginning. Everything was programmed, whether you're going to live to be 35 or 60, what your IQ was, and everything was determined about you. It was a dystopia. And in this dystopia, it's all dependent on information, but information the government gets from you. Young people, I think in particular, they recoil against sort of the idea that the government would know everything about our personal behavior, that they would know everything about what you communicate to your friends online. And then other people, the conservatives, sometimes say, well, if you have done nothing wrong, if you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear. Why do you care if the government wants to look at all your stuff, your phone records? Why do you care if you've done nothing wrong? Well, the standard that if you have nothing to fear, if you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear, is a little bit lower than the standard that I heard once upon a time. Innocent until proven guilty. When we talk about how we're going to attract new people, I said as I traveled around the country, we need to be the party that defends the entire Bill of Rights. We're good on the Second Amendment. Raise your hand if you're not for the Second Amendment here. I'll put you on the spot. Nobody. All right, somebody's being a wiseacre back there. But seriously, we are good. We are the party that believes in the right to bear arms. I tell you, if you don't believe me, come to my house unannounced. But we don't have to, we're there, and we should stay there. Defend the Second Amendment, absolutely. But you know what? The revolution wasn't fought about the Second Amendment. In fact, they never would have conceived of any government thinking they could take your guns away from you. Guns were an integral part of your life. Guns were an integral part of getting your food for your table. But guns were an integral part of keeping people from coming in your house. Guns were also an integral part of keeping a tyrannical government from invading your space as well. It was the threat of an angry populace. But that's why we put the Second Amendment out there. But is it really what we fought the revolution over? You know what we fought the revolution over? Much more the Fourth Amendment than the Second Amendment. One of the things that the colonists were very, very upset with was something called writs of assistance. James Otis sued in court in the 1760s over this. It was a famous court case. It reverberated across the Atlantic. There was a similar type case that was going on in England at the same time. The idea that you could write a general warrant and that it would be written by a soldier or a policeman, not a judge. And so James Otis argued against this, and John Adams said that the spark that led to the American War, the spark that led to the War for Independence, was really James Otis fighting against a tyrannical government that allowed British soldiers to write a warrant that said that you could go into anybody's house. It was about justice that was not individualized, justice that was not based on suspicion. And so if you want to talk to people and bring new people into your party, think about the times in our past when we haven't done the right thing, when we haven't individualized warrants. And you say, oh, well, the government's really not looking at it. They're just kind of collecting it and storing it. They're not listening. They're not looking at it. It's not about whether they are or aren't doing the wrong thing right now. It's about what has happened in the past. Have there been times in the past when we abused the privilege and government selected out people for scrutiny that wasn't equal protection under the law, wasn't just? Does anybody remember the internment of the Japanese? That wasn't something based on individuals. It was based on your race. Does anybody remember that the FBI basically looked at African Americans who were involved in civil rights and white folks that were involved in civil rights as well? Thousands upon thousands of people had their records looked at. The idea about having the Fourth Amendment, about separating police power from the judiciary, is not that the police are bad people. I don't want you to leave with the impression that I'm saying police are bad people or the FBI are bad people. You know, I play golf with an FBI agent in Bowling Green, and he asked me, he goes, do you think that I would do this? I don't think that he would do something wrong, but I think it's possible that there could be an FBI agent or a police agent or a policeman who is a bigot or a racist or hates people for who they are instead of doing it for justice. So we separated that power to separate out rogue elements. And it was a protection. It was a check and balance like anything else. And so the thing is if we go out and we say, you know what, we are that party. We were the party of emancipation. We are the party of civil rights and civil liberties. We are the party of equal protection under the law. Guess what? Ears will perk up and people will say, oh, I've never heard that before. Never heard that from the Republican Party. All here's about taxes and regulation and balanced budgets. Well, I got plenty to say on that too. But the thing is that we need to bring new people into the party. So I went to Howard University. I went to the Urban League, the NAACP, and all these groups that we haven't been going to. They say, you're the first Republican we've seen in 40 years. But you know what they say in the second breath? We haven't seen our Democrat congressman in a decade or more. They feel like they're being taken for granted, so we need to go out and grab their votes. Go out and take our message to them and say, look, liberty's for everybody. We are the party that will defend the liberty of all. Think about the times when we got it wrong and think about how we can be the party that will protect that. In 2011, we passed a law that allows for the indefinite detention of an American citizen accused of a crime. So somebody's accused, it's meant to go after terrorists, but it's not specific to terrorism. But it's an American citizen in the country accused of a crime. They don't get a lawyer, they don't get a trial, and they can be indefinitely detained forever. Does that go against our Bill of Rights? Does that go against what we stand? Are we so afraid of terrorism that we say, well, we're just willing to kind of give up with that whole jury trial thing? Think about what happens. We had this debate on the floor, and it doesn't bring all Republicans together. It may separate some of us in this room. But I had this debate on the floor, and I don't like to mention names, but it was a senator from Arizona. And so we had this debate, and I raised my hand, and I was incredulous. I said, you're going to send an American citizen to prison without a trial? And he said, yeah, if they're dangerous. And I said, well, that sort of begs the question, doesn't it? Who gets to decide who's dangerous and who's not? And if we give up what we are as a people in our fear of terrorism, haven't they in a way won? If we give up the very fundamental rights that we're trying to keep them away from us and protect us from, if we give up those rights in the process, I think you can have both. I don't think you have to give up your liberty for security. This is what Franklin said. He said, those who give up your liberty for security will have neither. You can have both liberty and security. You know, the whole idea with the bulk collection of your phone records. They say, well, we have to do this to prevent terrorism. Well, you know what? You can get a warrant. You can get a warrant and go as deep as you want. Remember the Boston bombers? Let's say I'm the judge, and I believe in privacy about as much as any American, but you call me at 3 in the morning and I'm the judge, and you say, all right, the Russians told us that one of these guys might have been radicalized. He traveled to Chechnya last year, and he's just posted something in a public space saying he's in favor of jihad. Can you get us a warrant to look at his phone records? I'm not only a yes, I'm a hell yes. But if you ask me, can we have all of the phone records of everybody in the Boston area or everybody in the United States? I'm a hell no, because that's going too far. After the Boston bombing, I met one of the policemen, and he came to Louisville, to Kentucky, and was speaking to a group. I was there, and he described, the race through the streets and the feeling of, trying to capture this person, the mayhem and the horror and the gore of the people who had been injured in this senseless bombing. And it's just hard to imagine, who are these people that are so evil that they would kill civilians simply to say that they're somehow furthering a political or a religious cause. And it's just hard to imagine. And the senseless violence and how terrible it was to see people dying in the street. Then he described racing through the streets and capturing the second brother. I guess can't remember. The first brother was killed, and the second brother they capture under a boat or something. But he said he was proudest to be an American when the fact of our anger and the fact of how he felt and the fact of how we all feel for these people, which is utter contempt and hatred for people who would do this. But he said he was proud to be an American, that we didn't drag him out and beat him to death with tire irons. As bad as this person is, as awful as this person is, a murderer, a person who kills women and children, is going to get something that everybody in our country gets that separates us from them. He's going to get a lawyer. He got a trial. He got convicted. He should have been convicted. But he got what we consider to be justice. It's what our soldiers go overseas to fight for. We have a young man that my wife and I were with the group, and we helped to build a house for him. He lost both legs and his arm in the war. But if you ask him what he was fighting for, he says, I took an oath to defend the Constitution, an oath to defend the Bill of Rights. He says, that's what I'm fighting for. And I guess to me is, wouldn't it be sad, wouldn't it be tragic if he went and gave so much and came home and found out that we gave up on the Bill of Rights while he was gone? So I think we can defend these things. These are not easy things. People say, well, you want to let rapists have a trial. Well, it doesn't mean I have sympathy for rape or murder. I want to preserve the system of justice, of having jury trials, of saying we don't condemn or incarcerate somebody without a trial. The ideas of justice, the ideas that people should be treated equally under the law, are powerful and potent ideas. And when we think about how are we going to get new people to come to our party, we could win Illinois, Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania if we were to get more African-American vote. We get like 5% of the African-American vote. If you got 20%, you'd win every one of those states and you'd win in a landslide. How do you do it? Show up, engage people, go to the south side of Chicago. I went to the south side of Chicago, and this minister, an African-American minister, has a church of 10,000 people. I didn't do this, but he's a registered Republican now. Every one of the people he had around him, the young men around him, said to a person, we're sick and tired of the Democrat machine in Chicago that rips us off. The money never gets to my neighborhood. They are prime and ready to hear a message. But the other message I took to them is, I think the criminal justice system hasn't worked for them. If you look in our prisons, 3 out of 4 people in prison are black or brown. And you might just say, oh, well, they're committing all the crimes. That's why they're in jail. It's not that simple. If you look at what happens, if you look at who is using drugs in our society, white kids are using drugs equal to black kids. White kids are 80% of the public. Black kids are like 12% of the public. How do we get all black and brown kids in jail? Are the police racist? I don't think that's too simple, too, and that's what the left will tell you. No, but the police go where the crime is. Crime's where there's more people. It's in the cities where there's more poverty, and there just happen to be more African Americans, so they're there. But how do we fix that? if we know that white kids are in the suburbs smoking pot and they're never getting caught and they're never going to jail for it? Their lives aren't being ruined. If you look at poverty and drugs and jail and back, it's a vicious cycle. If you say we're the party of family values and you want to connect fathers to their kids and fathers to their family, let's rethink whether or not nonviolent people need to be in jail for 15 years, 30 years. I promise you, when I open with that, at the NAACP or the Urban League or any predominantly African-American audience, ears are perking up. People are ready to hear it. Doesn't mean I'm giving up on anything we believe in. In fact, I think it's a continuation of what we believe in. But there are ways we can reach out to new people. Criminal justice is one. The other thing is what are we going to do about poverty? There's been a war on poverty for 50 years, and I think poverty's winning. But I don't think the Democrats have a great plan. Do the Democrats have a great plan for Flint or Detroit or any of these cities that are bankrupt? No, they sometimes want to send more government grants, which never work. After-school basketball is not a permanent plan for employment. However, we could do something. Why don't we have targeted tax cuts for poverty? That's what Jack Kemp talked about. So I put forward a plan called economic freedom zones, which is a dramatic, almost a lowering of taxes to almost nothing in areas of poverty. I'd go to Los Angeles and I'd carve out the poorest of the districts and the poorest of the zip codes, and I'd lower the corporate tax to 5%. I'd lower the personal income tax to 5%. I'll bet you there's somebody in this room that might move to one of those poor areas for that. The difference is between that and a grant. Let's say they're an equivalent amount of money. Let's say you send your taxes to me and I bring a check back for $1 million and I'm going to give it to a poor area in Los Angeles. Let's compare that to me never taking the $1 million and leaving it in a tax reduction in that area to the people who already live there and are already in business. That's how we measure it, dollar for dollar. The problem with the grant idea of me bringing it back is I have no idea who to give it to. And see, the thing is in business, 5 out of 10 businesses fail. In restaurants, it may be 7 out of 10 restaurants fail. But democratic capitalism, you vote with your feet, you vote with your dollars, and only the efficient producers succeed. So if we leave it as a form of tax reduction, you've already selected out who's good in business. But if I bring it in the form of grant, who do I give it to? Usually somebody that's a political contributor. Not me, but that's the way politics works. President Obama, let's think there for a while. $22 billion a year is given out in Department of Energy loans. Just a coincidence that most of the people getting the loans are Democrats? Remember somebody got $535 million loan for Solyndra? Just so happens he's a Democrat. Big donor to the president. The person they put in charge of dispensing the loans was a Democrat operative in charge of fundraising for Obama. But the thing is, that's not the way to give out money because you got to pick the winners and losers, and there's going to be favoritism. Let's give money back to the people. Let's give it in the form of never taking it. But I guarantee you, economic freedom zones, you take that to the south side of Chicago and you say, I'm going to leave $2-3 billion over 10 years in your community. We're just not going to take it. We are going to directly leave it. It's going to be in the hands of that guy over there who has a business and that woman over there who has a business. We're going to leave it in your community. I think that's something that we could offer. Criminal justice reform, leaving money in their communities, economic freedom zones, school choice. The schools are rotten, terrible. I mean, sometimes 50%, 60% of the kids are dropping out in some of these communities. And I'm not saying all public schools are bad. I went to public schools. My public school had calculus, physics, anatomy and physiology, chemistry too. I had great public schools. So you can have it. But there are many communities where they're completely just rotten, no good schools that are failing our kids. These kids go out and they're the ones that are either in drugs or crimes. Let's fix our schools. But you know one way to fix them? Make it like everything else that works in our society. They have competition. Let them go where they want. Let them walk with their feet. Let them go over to the suburbs. Let them come to your neighborhood. I think these are the things, if we offer them, people will come to us. We are the richest, greatest, freest country ever in the history of mankind. We need to understand, you know, people are talking about, I forget what the guy's name says, Make America Great Again. What's that guy's name? But it is an important question to understand how we got to be a great society. It worries me more than anything on my side, and believe me, some of the things worry me on our side, but it worries me more than that 28,000 kids are showing up under the arch in New York to hear Bernie Sanders. 28,000 people are in rapture to a socialist. Have they not seen the history of socialism? Do they not realize that violence is inherent to socialism? Have they not heard of the Gulag? Gets back, I guess, to the education problem. But the thing is that that's a big problem for all of us. But it's also a problem in delivering our message. We have to be 10 times better than they are at delivering the message. We have to be 10 times better at selling the message of freedom and liberty and opportunity. Why? Because it's easier to offer you a cell phone. I mean, it's easier to say, I'm here for free college. What's not to like? So I think we have to be better at, because we're offering something intangible. They're offering you stuff. They are Santa Claus, free things for you. But we have to be better because we're talking about opportunity. We're talking about something that isn't tangible, but something that's ever so much greater. But we need to, and I think people can get this. You know, this is the danger of democracy. People think, well, democracy is inevitably going to fail because the majority will vote for other people's money. The majority will think it's fair to take from those who work harder to give to those who don't. Maybe. But it's also why we weren't a democracy. We were never intended to be a democracy. We're a constitutional republic. Every student group that comes, if I have one question, if I have like 5 minutes with 20 kids in the 5th grade or the 8th grade, I say, are we a democracy or are we a republic? When Ben Franklin comes out of the Constitutional Convention, a woman shouts to him and says, what will it be? A monarchy, a republic, a democracy? And he says it's a republic, if you can keep it. But a republic means that we believe that our rights precede government, that our rights come from our Creator, they're naturally derived, and government was instituted among us to prevent government from abusing our rights because they're naturally ours. Some said they didn't want to vote for the Bill of Rights because they said people will think that that's all there is. So they added in the 9th and 10th Amendment. They said those rights not listed will not be disparaged. I think if we get that and understand that our rights come from our Creator and government was instituted to protect our rights, not to give us anything, not to take someone's possessions and give them to us. The thing I worry about our party is, my fear is, I hope this is not true, but that we succumb to the notion that just transferring power from President Obama to someone else is going to fix things. Madison said that when an excess of power prevails, that no person is safe in their opinion or their person or their possessions. It is about power. Power is a corrupting influence. We want limited government because we want maximum freedom. But this country that's the richest, freest, greatest, most humanitarian nation in the history of mankind has much greatness left. In 2014, we gave away, not the government, but us. You gave away to your church, to the Salvation Army, to charity, almost $400 billion. Privately, not the government. That doesn't happen in Cuba. It doesn't happen in Venezuela. It didn't happen in the Soviet Union. And when the president goes to Cuba, which I'm not so down on the Cuba policy. I think we will overwhelm them with communism, with capitalism, which is another story. But when he goes to Cuba and says that communism, capitalism, they're kind of the same thing, whatever works for you. That troubles me. Bernie getting 20,000 people for a socialist, for free stuff. President saying there's no difference between capitalism and communism. So there's one way you fight back, that's politics. Another way you fight back is through the foundation, through Young America's Foundation, through the long-term goals of promoting ideas. But both of them have to be done. We have to win the ideas battle. We have to continue to win in the political sphere. I think if we are a bigger, better, bolder party, I think if we're the new GOP, I think we'll rock and roll to victory, and I hope you want to be part of that. Thank you very much.